and those people had machetes and guns, etc. And so we had to figure out fairly quickly how to manage that. And certainly even way back then, my mediation was involving police and collaborating with them on keeping people safe so that they could actually have a negotiation, so that there wasn't, a continuation of picking up weapons and causing harm in the community.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a very dangerous place, the PNG. Are you able to sort of, explain some of the situations you have faced there?
Tribal violence may seem, it has cultural rules to it, so the protagonists may have very mundane, usual kinds of reasons for.
Welcome to the Strong Legacy Podcast, a place where real stories shape real strength. Today's guest is Craig Jones, Director of RREDD and a highly respected practitioner in mediation and conflict resolution. Craig brings extensive experience working across complex environments, including remote communities, helping restore order, building understanding and resolve conflict through culturally informed approaches. His work centers on mediation as a powerful tool, bridging divides, reducing harm, and creating sustainable outcomes where traditional enforcement alone cannot. In this episode, he shares insight from the field, the importance of communication and trust, and lessons learned from working in high-pressure, real-world situations. Here we focus on resilient growth and the commitment to building optimal well-being. Each episode features genuine conversation with people who have faced hardship, demonstrated courage, and created purpose through lived experience. Our aim is to inspire you to strengthen your body, sharpen your mind, and steady your spirit as you pursue your own goals and legacy. Before we begin, a brief disclaimer. The views and experiences shared in this podcast are for general information and inspiration only. Nothing discussed should be taken as professional, medical, or legal advice. Please seek qualified guidance for matters relating to health, well-being, or personal circumstances. The story shared belongs to each guest and may not reflect the views of the host or any organization. Listener discretion is advised, as some episodes may cover trauma, loss, or challenging life events. Thank you for being here. This is Strong Legacy Podcast, where strength is lived, learned, and passed on. Let's begin.
G'day, Craig. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
That's good, mate. Thank you for coming on the Strong Legacy Podcast to discuss your journey in the mediation world and going to all these very, very violent places to restore order. I'd like to hear from you. Craig, can you briefly outline your journey into the mediation and conflict resolution world?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Amit. It's not straightforward. I really have qualifications in environmental science, more than mediation per se. So I'm not a lawyer. I started that. I got an interest in it when I worked at the Central Land Council in the Northern Territory, and we did some training in cross-cultural negotiation. I moved from that to doing an actual mediation course. I'm working in the Native Title Tribunal. So I want to say, well, there was a bit of a gap. I did a fair bit of mediation work in the Northern Territory prior to that. But in '96, I got my first accreditation in mediation. I think the way I got there was that if you think about environmental problems, they're really all people problems. And a lot of conflict occurs around environmental problems. So can we put the mine here, or you've let your cattle into my property, or something of that nature, or can we knock down these trees, or can we harvest this, or those kinds of things. Why did I get into high risk, high violence? I think again that was in 2010, I helped set up the Papua New Guinea mediation system.
Yep.
And one of the first things I did there in terms of mediation was work with some high-ranking Papua New Guineans around a dispute in the Highlands, and those people had machetes and guns, etc. And so we had to figure out fairly quickly how to manage that. And certainly even way back then, my mediation was involving police and collaborating with them on keeping people safe so that they could actually have a negotiation, so that there wasn't a continuation of picking up weapons and causing harm in the community.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a very dangerous place, the PNG. Are you able to sort of explain some of the situations you have faced there?
Tribal violence may seem, it has cultural rules to it, so the protagonists may have very mundane, usual kinds of reasons for getting upset with one another, but they are definitely culturally based conflicts. So, and I think while the conflict is outside of the realm of violence, but still within the community, it should be managed at that level. It's once it gets into the chaos where things like guns and machetes, etc., get involved, that I think it needs some intervention. I think mediation alone, police alone, or military alone, that's probably not an answer. But if you combine them so that the police or the military can work with mediation to make people safe, so they can gather somewhere and, I might say, I might liaise with the officer in charge and then get the constables to remove the weapons from the people. Interestingly, with one of the ones, there were AK-47s, which I assume had come from China and were clearly not legal in PNG. So that was interesting to see.
They were very interesting, that one.
They weren't given back. The machetes were. I guess the challenge with it is that it's those groups of those communities have had conflict between them since time immemorial. And the problem now is that, or at least what people say, is that they've escalated into this chaos place. So before there wasn't guns, and there certainly wasn't the level of harm done. And so I think that's partially the problem, the changes that have come along. And I think it's driven in part by poverty, but also by a bit of it by climate change. So when there was a lot of drought and gardens failed, etc., that put a lot of pressure on people, and violence came out of that.
Yeah, so looks like modernization of the chaos with all the modern weapons sort of just have really extended that fight from just a simple dispute to a proper brutal escalation.
I want to make it clear though that I can't someone who's murdered someone, even in the context of tribal, well, not even, but within the context of tribal violence, mediation isn't going to get them out of the fact of the murder. That's still a police matter. It's illegal in PNG. It's illegal in Australia to kill someone. So the mediation isn't about, making a contract to not have someone go to jail or something. That's not true. It's about creating a broader peace. It's not about the individuals per se. The matters of crime are matters for police, not me.
Yeah, so it's about resolving the situation. Obviously, the law will take its own course, and obviously the investigation side of things. But just to resolve the issue that ABC has done.
Mm.
That's a very good thing to put down, because that's a thing where a lot of people forget to understand, that they think mediation happens, then the police can't get involved. So thank you for clearing that up.
Mm.
How does mediation in remote communities differ from traditional dispute resolution models? Or is there a difference?
I think well, yeah, it does. And I think if you come along and dump a Western mediation system on top of remote communities, you're going to end up causing further harm and not being effective at all. So
yeah,
I use what's called probably wrong words for a straight up podcast, but I use what's called a relational ontology. So what I mean by that is you've got to have a relationship with the people that you're working with. You can't be, a crisis intervention.
Yeah.
And thinking that you can come in straight from somewhere and not know anybody and mediate a thing isn't actually effective in the long run. It's not effective in creating community peace. It might be, you might be able to force people to stop doing something or cease from being violent to one another, but that's only for the moment, not for the longer term. I think the other way I see it as, and often the police in remote communities are like this too. You're kind of insider outsider. That is, maybe some police aren't like this, but you're both close to the community in the sense that you've worked out relations, and that could be things like calling someone mum or uncle or auntie or cousin or sister or bungee or those sort of kin terms. But you don't have the history of the community. You have a different history, so that's the outsider piece. But it gets you close enough so that people can work with you. And I think one of the things I'm trying to do in my mediation work is create a degree of certainty that the people themselves have control over the process. So if the local people, the community, doesn't see that they can trust the process, that it's arbitrary or it's something that the police want or the department wants, then it's not going to work. You've got to build a process that people can see might go somewhere. The other thing about that is that there are conflicts between themselves. If they also don't see that the process can go anywhere, there's no reason to put the weapons down or no reasons to not have the public riot or no reason to stop the violence, basically.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting point there. Why mediation matters. From your experience, why is mediation critical in communities experiencing ongoing conflicts and unrest?
I think there are a lot of things that can happen, but mediation can underpin managing these disputes. So as I said before, up to a certain level, that's the community are perfectly capable of managing their own disputes. But once it starts getting into this chaos space, that's when a bit of assistance is needed. However, if relationships have been built so that it's not just the police intervening, it's not just the mediator doing something, but it's also community doing something, then I think that's what makes the difference. So if everybody has a view about how to conduct this peace building using mediation as a tool, then that underpins an ongoing peace. You'll recall that, maybe for the benefit of your podcast listeners, if this is a kind of restorative justice example, if a prisoner comes back to a community, what's the chance of that being problematic in that community, given that there's victim and offender families? How is that going to be managed? Will there be a risk, which would put the prisoner potentially back in jail, or some violence occurring in the community? And I think before it was police and the prison, the prisons department are determining the risk. And so a person would come back or not. despite their ideas, despite the fact that they have citizenship rights. But that was just the two of those institutions assessing that risk. There was no family in that, victim or offender. But if you raise the families, the victim and the offender families, to the same decision-making level around risk as the police, the local police and the prisons, then you get a much better outcome, because you've underpinned that person coming back with actual information, with the community feeling empowered that they can take some matters into their own hands. And you'll recall some men who came back to community were able, with their family, to go to outstation and build their way in properly.
Oh yeah, that's a good explanation, that one. And what are the risks to the community safety and policing outcomes when mediation is absent, in your opinion?
Well, I think you might be a policeman that tries to work with community in that sense of that traditional community policeman. My harsh criticism of police sometimes is that they go behind the fence in the station and just stay there. They're in no relationship with people, and it's only their intervention. And I think that's a problem. That's the worst case, and hopefully that doesn't occur too much. On the other hand, if you're out there on your own trying to build that relationship, you're actually wearing a uniform and you've got a particular role, particular job to do, which is important, but that's not a neutral job. That's a particular job. And so I think mediation, both if the police person has the same, has those skills, along with being supported by an independent mediation person or service, and with skilled local community members who've got those, the ticket or the training or whatever it is, then that's the best possible situation where community conflict can be managed, outside of the arrest model. You can't arrest your way out of violence. It's gonna.
Yeah, sometimes it's you got to work with everyone. Because some people fight in the street doesn't mean that when you arrest two of them, the fight finished there.
No.
The issue that they fought over hasn't been resolved, and I can have a good appreciation of that, because obviously we work together in a lot of those things, and just diving down why they had a fight, and then going backwards and finding and fixing that through mediation was a key point of stopping from that happening. So no, I think that's a very interesting point, and a very, very good point, actually.
Plus, it gives you an opportunity to use local cultural protocol to help build. I keep using the word underpin, build strength around that piece. So the example I've got in my head is, you recall standing in front of a person's place where the family lived, the central house for the family, and the elders being out the front. And so rather than going to arrest the person, the method was the officer in charge, the mediator, talking to the family in such a way that enabled the person who needed to be arrested to present themselves in a way that was controlled by the family, but they felt safe. It wasn't a high energy arrest. It was a negotiated outcome that actually built relationships and built strength in trust in the police service, but also enabled the family, the offender family, to ensure that their family member was safe in the process, and they were certain of the outcome.
Yeah, no, that's a really excellent point there, because having that kind of involvement. But then again, there's a lot of work goes there, like a good relationship with the mediators and the elders and the family members, and being fair on both sides. And I think that was really, and just having this conversation around those key people, I think that makes the process fair, because they can see it's transparent. You can tell them that the other person is also getting arrested, and the other person is going to be taken back in. So there is no this taking sides, because
Yeah.
that's when the people start thinking you're taking sides if you haven't arrested the other side. So
Plus,
you
you're
know, it's
also, in the sense of the cultural protocol, you were outside the house on the ground in front of the house, which is
Yeah.
where the conversations occurred. It
Yeah.
wasn't police people inside a house, doing potentially what they have to do. But in this case, that cultural protocol, so that it was transparent, because everybody, other members of the family could see, other members of the community could see, and that enabled the outcome to occur.
Yeah, and also it's puts the accountability back on the offender too, to stand up and hand himself or herself in front of the family, to like, yep, I'm taking ownership of what I've done wrong. And it's at the same time apology to the family too, to putting their name in disrepute. So I thought, yeah, it was like it kind of works really well that way. And I kind of enjoyed that. I not enjoyed the dramas, but the how there's LEW and LORE working together through the mediation sphere. How does mediation complement, not replace, traditional policing and enforcement?
How does it complement?
Yeah.
I think there are still crimes that people need to be arrested, and that's not really. So if somebody murders someone, the best that say I could do as a mediator is work some kind of restorative process between families, so there's not ongoing violence based on the incident. I think if police have that tool and there's an ability, there's less likelihood of situations like Yundamu occurring. And I'm not talking about the facts of Yundamu. That's something that can be debated uphill and down dale. I'm talking about the situation where that kind of circumstance arises. If there's an underpinning of proper mediation work, that is a mediation system that is in effect a hybrid version of whatever local traditional dispute resolution system is in place, and the framework of mediation itself, and then working in the context of how that happens within that community. So you've got people who are, elders who might be working in the mediation space as well. So that means that it's a bicultural discussion. It's not just English at people. It's bicultural. So you can't just translate the local language into English, because often the systems don't match.
The message is missed.
But if those three things are going on at the same time, then you don't end up, I think, well, my proposition is that you don't end up in those situations where, like Yundamu, where you're needing to use a gun to manage the situation.
Yeah,
I think it underpins the, if you've done this over time, then there's less likelihood of that situation. It's not impossible, but less likelihood of that situation arising. I think once you've got there to that kind of thing, it's fairly difficult to wind it back. Having said that, one of the things I've developed over time is, how do you bring mediation to that crisis space where you've actually got to talk people down, or see what kind of conversation can occur to avoid high-end violent outcomes.
Yeah, no, it's the situations are different everywhere, and you're right. Sometimes having that relationship and being full step ahead in a community can avoid unnecessary situations. So that way everybody's on the same page. I suppose sometimes things happens and can't be helped. But I think there's a lot of what are you trying to say is like, obviously with your experience and stuff, it's mediation can be a solution to reduce those kind of incidents so happening. So but I think there's a lot of work needs to be done collectively to achieve that.
I think for my approach or my suggestion, if it could happen out there in the world, it would be that community police get training in mediation as one of their tools, not as the only tool, but one of their tools. And that means when they are working with independent mediators or local community mediators, that they've got an appreciation of what's trying to occur. Plus, they've also got an extra set of, if you like, questions or way to put questions that they can use.
I totally agree with that. That's a really good skill set to have. Like after working with you in funny story, I used to think I was a mediator because I used to do mediation before I even knew there was a mediation was an actual qualified position, if you know what I mean. When I was in Bimiji and did a bit of stuff in Northern Territory and Mount Isa and all that, and Hobart, where we used to sit down with the elders and do the mediation. Till when I met you and we sat down there and I'm like, right, this person's going to get arrested, that person's going to be arrested. That's it. You got to stop fighting. And I'm like, that's pretty much it. And you're like, well, that's not it. Because that's not mediation. I said, but it's resolved. And it's like, but mediation's about you bringing two parties together and them coming up with a solution. You just facilitating it. Like, wow, okay. But I was lucky enough to get that opportunity to do the course with you, and I had a great appreciation of what even though I was we did about 2.5 years worth of mediation properly in Erikun, you still don't get the full appreciation because I was still wearing the police hat and I still had an agenda when I'm going to these kind of things where I'm going to have to arrest somebody. Whereas as a mediator, you don't have your agenda is to resolve a situation. So working together and having that information and training now, it's amazing. And not just for mediation sort of thing for community violence and stuff like that. It's also about workplace conflict. What a great tool to have. What a great tool to have to prevent toxic environment creating in the workplace. So, I'm thankful that I was able to do that with your organization, and I'm loving it. It's giving me good appreciation of what actual mediation is.
Well, one example might be if you're going to deal with weapons, like if there are weapons in the community. Less guns in Australia than PNG, but maybe bow and arrow, which can be lethal. As a police person, you're going to, I don't know, confiscate the weapon or whatever it is you're going to do in relation to that. Whereas my conversation is about, okay, there's this conflict going on. How is it that you guys see this settling? What's the story here? And the question of weapons can come up. Well, tell me about that. What's going on with that? Why are they involved? How does that work? And maybe the elders make a decision that says, well, no, we don't want the young people with the weapons, so they're just going to have to give them up. Okay, well, how's that going to happen? Well, no one wants to get nicked by the police, so maybe they're just left somewhere where somebody can come and collect them or whatever it is, some kind of conversation. But it was in the hand. So the decision, not so much the collecting of the weapons, but the key decision was older people making a decision that the younger people couldn't be using weapons as part of a dispute. That wasn't a thing that they were, they understood the dispute. They had the conversation. Well, okay, you can't be doing that anymore. And while that's not a
So,
perfect process, that happened often enough for me to think that it was a pretty good process.
yeah, no, it's good because like, but going back to those situations there, just sometimes, talking with the elders because we'll be looking for weapons and stuff. Like, where was it? Because we could see in the footage there was weapons, and then having the mediation, through the mediation, we were able to then get people to hand over the weapons.
Mm.
And I think it was a great way, instead of us going doing all the search warrants all everywhere, because it would have been just a very time consuming and very hard thing to do when you're trying to stop fights and stuff. So getting the elders involved through the mediation early and getting to hand over all that stuff was great. But what I saw afterwards was, like, once we started running that mediation really well, working with the elders and yourself and us, and the amount of violence pretty much evaporated from the streets. We were not getting big scale fights anymore with weapons and stuff. So I think that was really good. And people were actually having issues. If there was something brewing, they will come to you guys directly instead of waiting to get on a fight. And so empowering the elders, I think, through that process was really great. And with the mediation, and I found that for the policing side, I think was really amazing because it reduced a lot of our workload.
The relational part is important. Some people will I think community, my ideal situation is where communities manage their own disputes, that there are people with the correct skills and they do it. And if someone like me is going to come along, then it's for training or for potentially high-end violence or very difficult problems. But if you are there, then I think you've got to be out in the community and working with people. And I know that everyone gets all het up, like silly things like, can I put Auntie in the motor car on a 40-degree day and take her from the supermarket to her house? And my view is, well, she's an elder. That's a measure of respect. And if your relationship is that she's a direct auntie, I'm not using the term, the auntie term as a respect term, but rather as she is my auntie. She's sister for the woman that I call mother. So for me to not put her in the car and take her, home, that would be problematic. That would eat away at my relationship with people. Later, when I want to use my relationship, my ability to say to someone, listen, boy, a young fella, you got to put down that machete. You can't be wandering around. I can hear you're upset, but you can't do it. Well, like, I'm going to have to call the police if you keep going.
Yeah.
So, and you'll hear, so in the example I'm thinking of, the young lad was, very upset about something, probably to do with girlfriend or whatever, but and he was having a go at me, but he was using a respect term instead of my name, a traditional respect term, in amongst all the, in between the expletives and the carry on, and he did put the weapon down. No, I'm fine with that. I can be yelled at. I don't mind. He was obviously upset. He's entitled to be upset. People are upset all the time about things, but they just can't express it with weapons that are going to cause serious harm to someone.
Yeah, no, that's really true. Like those kind of stuff when that happens, and just having that good relationship, but you also have to honor the relationship. Like I still get phone calls from all these communities I've worked in, like, 'cause they just want some advice or some help, but they can't do this or that, and just an advice. So you do that. You just check up with people because obviously when you were in the community, they did give you a level of protection in terms of cultural authority. So you respect it, like so. I still cherish those moments that we had. In Aurukun, we work closely to restore order. What were the key drivers behind the conflict we were addressing?
I think there's like drivers and there's catalysts.
Yeah.
So if you've got the drivers in place, I'll talk about those in a minute, and then you add alcohol, that's not a good thing. That's true for any human community. You know, alcohol will fuel violence. It's a thing, as will amphetamines. And they're really hard to manage in those circumstances. In the case of Aurukun, there's an alcohol management plan and it's illegal. It's also a drain on, you know, if what are they, 750 ml bottles of rum? No, what are they, 1 litre? What's the, I don't know, but they're $750 a go. So that's a big drain on someone's pocket.
Yeah, some of them, yeah, but or 5 litre cask of wine is sometimes about $500 on a high end.
That's stuff. Drivers are, there's always conflict across the clan lines, across the community lines, and that's what I say. Well, that's standard, you know. That's just a traditional community. It's a small town. There's things going on, and so other sensitive points are during sorry business, because if you've got a dispute, or if you've got something that you disagree with the other family with, you know, the right time to push the button is during, you know, if you want to provoke something, is during sorry business.
Yeah,
because people will get upset. They will do things,
Yeah.
and so I think that sorry business process requires management prior to it. If you already know there's some pre-existing conflict, then somebody passes away, then there has to be work done to help people manage the conflict, both the public chaotic ones and then the ones that they might manage themselves. So the drivers would be the usual sort of things: jealousy, not someone's got money and someone else doesn't, and you know, a lot of those kind of simple, straightforward stuff. With all due respect to everyone, one of the things that people say to me is the 15-year-old girls run the house. And I think what they're saying to me, or what they're meaning, is that the use of Instagram and the teenage jealousies and whatnot end up escalating into higher level conflicts where the adults are dragged in because of the traditional, the relationships, the family relationships between people. So if one family one teenagers from one family are attacking the teenagers from another, then that draws in the adults, and that creates a problem. And that's fueled with Instagram and Facebook and the fact that everyone has each other's passwords. They are sometimes hard to manage, although often you can get a circle of people with that provides the adults with the opportunity to, in effect, read the riot act for the young'uns.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation, but you're right. It's but having that connection with the community and the elders gives you the early warning signs that something is brewing. And then when you're able to nip it in the bud with the phones, it doesn't get escalated through mediation. You resolve that, and it doesn't escalate into big fights and family, conflicts in the community. So, yeah, I think it's a very important one. Which leads me to the next question: what role?
Hang on, I'll just say this. So after that murder in 2020, and before that, Aurukun had many murders. Often, it's part of its history. So that's one of the things that happened. But after that murder, and I came after that to work with Walwal Martin at his invitation. But after that, we were able to underpin, using mediation as a thing, underpin the situation such that there still have been no murders since then, and that's unheard of in that community.
Yeah, and like you said, it's all about legitimacy of the mediation process was restored basically. So people understood that they can go and mediate and have the situation resolved, and police will do. Obviously we have to do our bit, but there was a lot of stuff. But I think it was all just what he's saying is we all kind of work together in that space and having that understanding and resolving. Because, like I said, we arrest people, they go to jail, they come back and keep fighting. Doesn't fix the problem. But having the mediation, but having the cultural uniqueness, mediation was a great thing. What role did cultural understanding and local leadership play in achieving successful mediation outcomes? For us, the policing side of thing, we just simply adapted the learning the language instead of and for us, it was a game changer.
I think using language words is important. Using kin terms is really important.
Yeah.
I think those, at that level, if you're in a place long enough, which might be a problem for policing, but if you're in a place long enough, having a go at learning the language might be a thing. And I think that's helpful. Certainly. I think certainly engaging in the various events that occur. So going to funerals, going to important cultural events, participating in those events, even at simple things like barbecues or potentially using the police truck to do something, I don't know.
Positive, yeah. It's like breaking the ice. I had the idea of actually it was Auntie Harriet. She gave me some languages like keywords. If people are fighting or they're yelling, instead of saying in English to shut up, you could say "pomma," and I used it in a big. There's a big brawl happening, and I walked out there and just said "pomma," and people stopped, looked at me, and both people that were fighting, family, they started laughing, and I think it's just my accent at the first place.
Maybe.
But the other thing was just stop them from, and they got the thing directed where then I was able to speak to different elders to separate them up and then start the mediation. So yeah, it's such a great thing to have.
And so potentially a policeman, people say that the word tapant is like mediator, but I think it's really, the behaviour is a bit more akin to what the policing might do. So it's kind of blocker. And if you understood how that worked, it might be, that might be a thing to do in that community. But every community is going to have a different thing and a different situation and a different history. And so it's a matter of figuring out what's going on there and then taking that into account.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point there. Can you walk the listeners through what real-time mediation process looks like on the ground in a place like Arakoon or PNG?
So I use a design process. So I have a hand rule, which the thumb, you start with the thumb. So story is the thumb, next finger is issues, questions, answers, transaction, and they speak to the steps. A traditional mediation looks like intake, which is talking to both parties or the parties separately before you bring them together. In the traditional mediation, they then speak briefly about their what the issue is for them, what the story is, and then the mediator figures out what the main issues are, takes them by listening to everyone, extracts those and uses single words often to pick an issue that everybody has. and then you start to explore that issue, then you look for options that will address that issue, and then you try and bring the options together in what might form an agreement, and then you have some kind of way of closing the matter, which might be a signed agreement or in PNG to be kill a pig or get a dugong or whatever it is to finalise the matter. The way in Arakoon it would be go and talk to each of the groups involved. Now that may mean some people, several meetings with different people with different families on the same side of a dispute. So, but it's always going to be not an individual. So in an Indigenous community, it's not about an individual conflicting with another individual. It's more like a family or a clan that's got an issue with the other family or clan that's been started at the point of that individual. And so the resolution isn't with them, it's broader. And often it will be about the resolution or the rebalancing or the harmony coming back in terms of the relationships more than the content. So more than the actual, whatever it is. And I think that's important. Often you can use the content as a way of talking together, but keeping in mind that what you're really doing is actually managing the situation so that the relationships can be restored, which is why traditional mediation pretty much won't work, because you focused on a content thing and you tend to be focused on an individual. Clearly, the content problem for a single person is not the content problem for a whole family.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with some people. So it is about the relationship. Auntie Harriet Puchamunka is an accredited mediator. One of the things she's taken is the English term common ground, which you would, understand as making an underpinning between groups about, how it is that they've got the same interests at heart. Her version of it was to, at a particular point, so it's a strategy, speak to parties about how they are related ancestrally. Her point of view being, if they know that they're actually not separate, if they know they're close, and who in the grandparents' generation or the great-grandparents' generation, how they should be calling those people in kin terms, that they come from there, that will restore the idea that they're actually one family and therefore should be fighting.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of going around to all the people. You've got to be in the community, you've got to be working with people. In all places, I will use the bicultural approach. So that means it's not just me going and talking English to people. It's someone who's got local language. I might have some. I might use some words. I might use a particular knowledge of culture, but definitely I'll have someone speaking fluent whatever the language is for the place. So like in PNG, I'm sure I can use Pidgin, but often the mediation is going to involve people who only have top place, so which means local language. But I don't have that, so you've got to work out how to bicultural thing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of speaking about, okay, how do we bring these people together? What is it? You ask people questions. Well, who should be there? Like, that's important. So if Uncle is in Cairns and he's central to the thing, there's no point to a meeting. Like, you wouldn't, well, okay, well, when's he back? How's that going to work? Ding, 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 right? So sometimes a bit frustrating that way. But that might give people an opportunity to say, well, okay, he's down there. We're going to go bush. We're going to go to outstation, because sometimes that's what people want to do. They want to go away and cool down. Then they can come back and have a conversation. So things like, where are we going to meet? Who needs to be there? Is it at the police station or is it somewhere else? is it in, what are the things that should happen? Do people feel safe? So should we be ringing up the officer in charge and see if we can get some constables to come down and just stand around? Time, date, place, food's important. And then explaining to people the process. What's going to happen, how's it going to work, what are we going to talk about? Because people want to know that it's not going to be a fight.
Yeah. Or they can go to the shop without getting attacked.
Well, yes, there's all the important things they have to do, which gives it an urgency. Why they want to finish this thing is because the ATM's in the shop and I can't get there because etc. Like those kind of practical things. But you can also use those as levers. If you want to go to the shop, then we're going to have to deal with this. We're going to have to talk about it. So it's not always true that people want to do these things, and it's partly the job of the mediator to provide opportunities for people to take up the concept of mediation. And sometimes that's speaking to what they say, not what I say, but what they say is their interest. I can't go to the shop to get money out of the ATM is something that they would have said. Yeah. And you can say, well, okay, how's that going to work if we don't actually address this? Yeah, all right, well, let's get on with it, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a very, very complex but very interesting thing. So I've been, like I said, I've been very, very fortunate that I always wanted to do help with the mediation and stuff, but then I was very fortunate to work with you because you actually qualify a mediator, and it was great to see and work, bounce ideas and get that sorted away. So it was, to me, it all makes sense. So it just made my work a little bit easier. What has your most challenging mediation experience across PNG, Northern Territory, or Arakan?
So Northern Territory one was, there was a native title claim that had been not lodged or stuffed up for a decade. So people weren't getting their traditional country back under that process, and they just wasn't working. And so the problem was that it was very challenging because part of the legal process is that you've got to have a book, you've got to have someone recording stuff, and you've got to give that to the, that's the evidence. Versus what really happens is that people they're practicing their law in the moment, in now. So the book is kind of an archaeology of knowledge, while the practicing in the now is, it's traditional law now, but the proposition that it doesn't have politics is just silly. And so how do you balance that? How do you, if the object of the exercise is to get a native title claim lodged successfully, then how do you balance that law in the now process so that people can make a decision as a group to do that? And I think that's finding opportunities for that as people say or describe what it is they think they want to do in order to make a thing work. So in that one, it was a case of trying to repair a relationship that had been damaged 40 years ago so that the correct traditional people the correct senior people could make a decision that would enable the claim to be lodged. And the problem was that no one had really thought about working with that relationship idea and how that might work. And the two men were able to repair the relationship based on the idea that country to them was important, and the only way they could make a decision about country, the only way they could operate in law, was to work together. So they didn't have to love each other, they just had to make a decision to work together. Elsewhere in the Cape, a funeral home putting the wrong man in a box and then for some reason that box there being a no open casket, and then he gets buried in someone else's hole and he's carried by the wrong relatives, and do you and that caused violence. The police service asked me to help see if we could get to the bottom of it. But that wasn't about discovering the facts. Who did what? Like, that's a negligence thing for a court somewhere to do with the funeral home, etc. But how do people very upset? So 3 separate families, two different deceased, but one person in the wrong grave next to someone else's wife. Do we dig him up, or do you leave him there? So if you dig him up, you're going to cause community believe that would cause illness, but they also believe that it would cause illness if they left him there. And so did people have enough confidence to, and I say that with a great deal of respect, to work through that problem in a traditional way, and how could they? And as you said before, facilitation is the way to achieve things. And that wasn't straightforward, because there were lots of vested interests and lots of players intervening at the wrong time.
Yeah.
That was difficult.
I can imagine that.
PNG one, the circumstance was that there was a royalty association, and the chair of the royalty association was making it so that one group within one legal group within that association wasn't getting a distribution of kina, and that had gone to court, so I was mediating it, and it was just going nowhere and then someone told me that the problem was that the chair, who was a young man, he had a conflict with that particular group, who was led by an old man. The old man had killed the chair's father by beheading him in the middle of the village with a machete, and so there was limited chance that, and I'd learnt that they'd done lots of traditional, the guy had done his 25 years or something in hard labour in, I want to say it's Berrima, whatever the name of the prison is, yeah. And then they'd done traditional reconciliation, but that didn't work. I couldn't actually get them, I could get them into the same space, but I couldn't get them to do any kind of meaningful conversation. And so the way around that was to help the women, work together, the relatives, because one of the outcomes was that the royalty is used for the uniforms and getting to high school and funding educational things and stuff. So it was, the chair could then see that it was legitimate and not about that guy.
Yeah.
So there was a way for him to, his interest was that if it kept going, then he wouldn't have been chair anymore. So
yeah, that's a very complex situations, so glad you got some good training there to get it sorted. What common
maybe
mistakes?
one last thing in that, the other thing is, like in PNG, one mediation had 20,000 people in it. I mean, that's hard to. You got to be a bit creative around how you manage that.
Yeah, no, it's they are very complex situations, but I totally agree. Mediation, working with the law enforcement and community to come up with a plan to sort it out. What common mistakes do agencies or leaders make when attempting mediation?
To wander into it as if it's a negotiation using adversarial bargaining. So that means they're going to be hard on what they want and not very sympathetic for what the other side wants, and reduce it to just the content. So I think that's the biggest mistake, and they feel like that because they're constrained by policy or or some other institutional need that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, housing in Aboriginal communities in Queensland is managed as if it was rental housing in Brisbane. Really? I just don't understand, and that causes conflict constantly, because a person from a community might say, okay, I have to go to Cairns for a while, but uncle, it's your house because it's our house, like it's the family house. That's not how housing sees it, and so there'll be this conflict, and it just ends up being this sort of, there's no way to match, there's no policy room, there's no way to resolve that. So
it's
housing
different kind of
wants to toss that family out because the leaseholder isn't no longer in the building, so to speak.
Yeah, that will create a lot of conflicts for sure.
So I think you've got to, again, like I would tell all people in mediation, particularly those with a hard view on content, what's your interest here? What is it that where, just think about this particular problem. Where do you want to be? What's the thing you want to get to? What's the, if you've got 8 officers to run this housing thing and it's costing this much, you could reduce that cost by changing, something, changing how you approach it.
Yeah, so much, it's not just simple as, just doing things. It's so complex problem. So that's why the mediation route is so important, where people can sit down and discuss and see what they want, and all parties what they want, and then you meet in the middle, and they come up with a solution. With leadership and culture, how can leaders foster a culture that values mediation alongside enforcement?
Again, I think it's a matter of what's the longer view. What is it? So if there's a tool available to you in policing that would reduce the crime rate, why wouldn't you pick it up? Because this way, the crime rate's going to go up, and that's a measure, plus the cost of doing, that business will go up, versus another way, whatever it is, whatever the innovation is, that might reduce the crime rate and reduce cost and increase the look after the health and well-being of officers, so they're not needing to put themselves into situations where it's pretty scary and hairy. Why wouldn't you do that? I just think that's perhaps the way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Sorry. Yeah, you go.
I've never said to any police officer anywhere in any country that they should suspend the rules that they need to work by, right? They've still got to arrest criminals. They've still got their own way of practice. But I will ask people to do things in the context of whatever it is that's going on for a greater interest. Like, if you arrest this bloke now, there will be 15 dead people. No, I don't want you to do that. You can blame me. You can go and tell that, what I want is that to be delayed. You don't have to arrest him now. Sure, you've got a warrant. It doesn't say now. It says arrest them, So let me try this, and then you can have a go. But if you do it now, you're going to have a lot bigger problem for yourself.
So just having that, which leads me to the next question, which is, how important is collaboration between police, community leaders, and external mediators?
Absolutely. That last conversation, I couldn't have that conversation with that kind of voice unless the person I'm talking to respects me and I've already got a relationship. In Australia, mate, please, listen, just give me an all right, look, I've got, there'd be a little tic-tac. I'll have to go and talk to someone, but, okay, we'll come back, yada, yada, yada. Whatever it is can be negotiated. And that collaboration, sure, there might be hard moments and not everything can happen every time, but if you're known to each other, so if and I always say that with respect to everyone, my measure of policing is, are they outside the fence or are they always inside the fence? If they're not outside the fence, then that's hard work. It takes a lot of energy to get someone to shift from behind that desk to, being in the community. And that, like I don't disrespect those people. It's just how the system works, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point out there, and I know there's a lot of police officers that do a great job trying to work in with that. But I think the mediation it's a bit of a new new thing for officers. And I think more education in that space would help them, because at the end of the day, it is a great tool. Like you said, it does work. I've done a lot of stuff and it has worked. So, looking back, what stands out most about the work we did together in Ericune in that collaboration?
The violence against the person, that kind of crime dropping, actual murders not occurring. The idea that people could hand over weapons, the increase in that people would come forward and say, well, I've got this, let's have a conversation before it gets to the point where it's of interest to the police.
Yeah, I really like that, the data that was collected, because, it was like 49 referrals. We used to do all the referrals to the mediation. And when we had all this collaboration going on and working with the elders and yourself and the police and a lot of education around community, then the latest stats was that it was like 49 mediation referrals done to the police, because we went to the police school directly, not necessarily went to a incident. The biggest standing point on that was 39 was self-referred, where they went directly to the mediators to ask for mediation. I think that was the massive, like for a place where conflict was so thing, but it's just to understand the community's dynamics change in terms of understanding how to resolve issue, respecting the LORE with the elders and the TAP hunt with your guys, the mediation, and then working with us. I think that I saw that was a massive shift when that happened. It's like, whoa, we didn't even know they had some sort of issue happening, because they could resolve. So before, everything used to end up on the street. Then eventually, out of 100 mediation, 49 was police referred, but 39 was then going direct to a thing, and we didn't even know anything about it. So I think that's what you're talking about. The community taking ownership in coming forward, but understanding the parameters that was put in place. So I think that was really good. What advice would you give officers stepping into similar environment for the first time?
Talk to the people who've been there before. But seek information from outside the policing circle. So, if there's it's pretty easy to get a history of a community. That's relatively straightforward. That's just Google, and you can get a pretty good view of the nature of that place. But also seek out, I think there's a reluctance among police because of the neutrality idea, but seek out the relations, be willing to call someone auntie, mum, cousin, brother, whatever, in a meaningful way. And I think that you can still be neutral, but you've then got an insider-outsider stance, which I think will help with the policing.
Yeah. And just on the other note, what skills should frontline officers develop to support or engage in mediation effectively?
I think learn to ask open questions rather than questions that seek evidence. So tell me about that. How you going, Uncle? What's going? How can I help? Those kind of rather than who did what to whom and when. It's more, being curious, wanting to know what kind of situation, how you're feeling. And I know lots of police officers do that, but I think there's a time and a place for the evidence gathering. And if it's mediation, you're not doing that. So you've got to decide which task you're doing and not mix them.
Yeah, no, that's very important. Because like I said, before I met you, I was mixing everything up. Like
I think you've got to not judge. So you can't walk into a situation with a view that this group of people are somehow dysfunctional. You can't do that. You've got to come along with an idea that you can facilitate, you can own a process. They obviously own their interest and their circumstance. It's not up to you to judge that circumstance or that interest. Your only role is to facilitate. And so if you can not judge, that would be great. If I was talking to a police audience, and I can be cheeky here, I would say, don't go into a community house to arrest someone. Wait for them through some other means to come outside. It's just a whole world of pain going inside to arrest someone. And I think that's led to bad outcomes more than it's ever led to a good arrest. So that would be my cheeky advice to police.
To happen, but there's sometimes you have to go in for different reasons and stuff like that. And
well, I'm talking about the specific
yeah.
instance of arresting someone.
Yeah.
My view is that there's plenty of opportunity around relatives, and you can wait. They're eventually going to have to come out.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes. Well, it is happens, and building the relationship, and like what you just said, it works really well. So yeah, it works out.
So an example would be, you come up and say, oh, Mr. Smith, you need to come out, or we're coming in. Yeah. Versus, hey, nephew, what are you doing? Uncle here wants to, rah, right? So that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
You can be a bit growly with nephew maybe when you're reasonably close, but you might leave that to some other close, an actual blood relative. But that's a different conversation to Mr. Smith, and so you can see how that changes that dynamic.
It's always good to do a situational awareness. How to effect an arrest. So make sure that officers are safe, other people are safe. So good advice.
Yeah, but as I said before, it's not my gig to tell. Been cheeky before. It's not my gig to tell an active police officer what to do, nor is it my gig to tell an elder what to do. Like you've got you stay in your lane, and you help facilitate. You don't dictate what other people's. Because
there's a different situation. So I understand your point, and no, it's really good. And no, thank you for coming on and giving your wisdom about mediation.
Well, they can use my email address, craig.jones@redd.com.au, and the REDD is spelt RREDD. And I'm happy to talk to people about mediation. I think probably the last thing I'd say is every single mediation you do and every single thing you do in the space is you take time afterwards to reflect back on what happened in that situation to work out what you might change or how you might do it. Everyone's human. We can all make mistakes.
No, that's really good advice. And thank you for coming on. And I'll share your details on my links anyway. So
thank you.
if people wanted to approach you, and because I think it's a very good tool to have, like not just only community conflicts, but also workplace conflicts and stuff like that. It's a great tool to understand how to how to communicate and how to facilitate. So, no, thank
Alright.
you.
Good on you, mate. Ta-da.